Chris, happy to you're awake. You're
I'm here, man. It is great to see you.
You had your coffee?
I do. I got a little coffee going. I'm going to be waking up throughout the episode today. I might be half asleep. I might be fully asleep at this exact moment.
Well, I mean, if you do your job like you normally do, our audience will be asleep soon.
I was going to my joke on that was, and that differs from my normal performance. How? It's just my normal.
Good morning, everybody, by the way.
That's great. And thanks for joining us. Anthony, why do successful founders suddenly realize they've built the wrong company? God, that one stings a little bit. Did you know that 73% of founders completely abandoned their original 10-year vision within just 3 years of starting their company? Henry Ford, have you heard of that guy? Henry Ford? Is he? I think he started Instagram. Henry Ford once said, "The man who has no imagination has no wings." But he also almost went bankrupt 3 times chasing short-term production targets. Today, Anthony, on How to Founder, we're talking about balancing long-term and short-term goals. I am your host, Mr. Christopher Franks. I'm going to go by my full name because Mr. Anthony Franco. Anthony, why don't you go by Tony? I've never asked you that question.
I don't like because once somebody told me a joke, why most Italians are named Tony.
Yeah.
It's because it's what it said on the boat coming over. And I just didn't like to New York.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it was such a bad joke that I just could not like it.
Because it wasn't that good of a joke, really.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. The joke was so bad that it's just turned me off to the name.
Yeah, that's a fair enough. Luckily, it is not just you and I. We have Mr. Adam Torres with us today. Adam, welcome. Adam Torres is the co-founder of Mission Matters Media, a platform with over 100,000 podcast videos and books spotlighting entrepreneurs and leaders. After 14 years managing $500 million in assets for high net worth families, Adam pivoted to storytelling, conducting over 6,000 interviews and authoring 30 plus business books. Holy cow, Adam, 30 plus business books. Can you show them all to me? Can you even remember the names?
There goes one, there goes two, there goes. Come on, man. You didn't know I brought gifts. Come on. You get a book. Who gets a book? Come on. Who wants it? Oh, wait. There goes another one. That's the first one. You want some more? Come on. Another one? Hold on. Do you want more?
Usually I'd say, man, Adam, I can't wait to buy your books. But if I buy all 30 of your books, I'd go broke. I wouldn't have any money left for my coffee.
It's called a catalog. That's the cost of long-term thinking right there. We need a catalog, Chris.
Oh, nice. That was well done.
What a segue. All right. So Adam, what does this mean? So why does this matter for me as a founder? So much of what we do as a founder is really just about staying alive. Yeah. For that next, the ability. As a matter of fact, part of the conventional wisdom is the job of a founder is just keep your company alive long enough to get lucky.
Survive.
Why do we consider long-term thinking as an important aspect as we're getting going and starting companies?
Yeah. So for me, when I'm thinking about long-term thinking, and I love that you brought a Henry Ford reference up though in the opening of the show. So I'm originally from Michigan, so I'm from Detroit, and I spent a lot of time in the Henry Ford Museum. And when I was in college, I actually got to go through and study in his archive and read his writings. So when you think about a long-term thinker or things that he was thinking about, think about the original V8 engine. They told him that was impossible. 8 cylinders, you can't do that, and it took took years to develop that and to finally get that distributed, and completely changed things. It completely changed things in horsepower and the way that like automobiles were made during that time period. And that wasn't supposed to happen, but they didn't think you could do it. You could get that much power. So thinking about things like that, he had a real long-term thinking approach. For me, obviously, I'm not making cars here, right? So I'm in the media business. So a lot of individuals, I'll relate it to my experience when it comes to media, are many times following trends of the day. So they're creating catalogs, they're creating content, but they're not necessarily always thinking about how that content is going to age. So when you think about what we've done with our company, is we focus primarily on what I like to call evergreen content. So we always, whenever we're doing an interview or whenever we're bringing somebody on the show, I want their story that isn't really going to age. So for example, your founder stories. Why did you start this show? How did you start this show? Like, that is a moment in time. That's never going to change. So what we found is, over time, by having that type of content, your catalog becomes more and more valuable. Like, this becomes more and more interesting. And I like to say that it becomes something that somebody that's going to be watched even possibly generationally. Like, so we get comments on one of our YouTube channels where I see like I've had some comments like, oh, that's my grandpa on the show, or, oh, that's my dad, or things like that. And you already know that people's kids, like, we've made them quote unquote YouTube famous, right? For their kids to see them on there. So that long-term value of creating that catalog has completely changed our business. And we're just really, I mean, we're 9 years in this particular business, and we're just starting to see some of the compounding effects of what that looks like. And me personally, so you mentioned over 100,000 pieces of content. I've personally done over 6,000 interviews. And so what that looks like is, you know, I'm only 9 years in this game. I'm still pretty young. So what does that look like in another 10 years when I add another 20,000 interviews to the catalog? Because this year I'll do over 2,000 interviews. So when you look at what that does, that compounding effect and that flywheel and that catalog of content, we don't really know what that's going to lead to. But going back to long term, what happens in another 20 years? Like, the greats, the best people that have ever done this business, in my opinion, like the old school, like the Johnny Carsons and those types of individuals, they were on the air for 30 years plus. So can you imagine if they had a public catalog that could be accessed at any given point with that 30 years of content? We don't know what would happen. But for us in our day and age, and as entrepreneurs out there, whether you're in the media business or not, like content creation, the compounding effect of what that looks like over time, when somebody's really focused on the long term, it's going to be interesting. We don't even know. Like, it's just never been done. This is the first time in history that we have the type of distribution that we do, and the ease of distribution, with the lack of, or I should say, the low barrier of entry and low cost for that distribution.
Anthony, do we consider that our grandkids might see us being
Oh,
silly?
they're
Should we start deleting episodes now, or should we have like a death clock if one of us dies?
I'm just worried about like people asking me, why did you hang out with Chris? I don't know how to answer that question.
It's a fair question, Anthony. It's fair. Anthony, I think when we think about long and short-term thinking, this is a genuinely very, very interesting question for founders. We have to start with a vision. We have to start building something that we believe is going to be successful in 10 years. We have these big overarching goals. Anthony, how have you approached that idea of trying to build for a vision of the future, but knowing the fact you have to make payroll in 2 weeks? Like, it is a constant pressure, isn't it?
Well, I think Adam kind of revealed, and I want to dig a little bit more with Adam on this, because you said something in passing, but I thought it was really revealing. And you're like, who knows where this winds up? I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but you're like, you're going through and building all this content. Essentially, you're doing a lot of short-term work, right? It's 6,000 interviews. That's a lot of small steps towards this long-term thing that you're building. But from what you said, it sounds like you don't know exactly where it's going. How do you how do you reconcile that? how do you reconcile the fact that you believe there's something at the end, but you don't
Yeah.
know what that end goal looks like? So that's
Well,
almost having faith in the long term that you can't see. How do you like balance that for me?
so that's so for me, this is that's how most would look at it. For me, it's all numbers. So I started in finance. So I'll give you my numbers, and I'll tell you where my thesis lies. So here's where my thesis lies. Podcasting is even though it's been around a long time, I believe we're in like year 1 of 2 of podcasting, and here's why. Over 150 million YouTube channels, less than 4 million podcasts. Out of those 4 million podcasts, there's only like 200,000 episodes being published per week. Now so what that means is why. So when I go back and I do my research, I believe the reason why that is because ad attribution, small content creators being able to actually monetize their shows is a relatively new thing in podcasts. And for the audience that may not be aware of this information, I'll kind of juxtapose. YouTube, you used to be able to, way back in the day, monetize even small channels that had hundreds of views, and the pennies started to roll in. So small creators benefited from YouTube advertising in the beginning. Podcasts never had that chance. Now that podcasting does have that chance, if you combine that with the worldwide distribution and the fact that it's audio only, and I know there's videos too, but let's just say primarily it's audio only. So now you have, hundreds of millions of other creators that this is going to be opened up to. So my thesis is, in the podcasting space overall, one day there's going to be 50 million, there's going to be 100 million podcasts. So now you take that knowledge, and let's just say that I believe in my thesis strong enough to bank my future in my company on that. The next thing I did was I designed the company around my thesis. So and I should say myself and the other co-founder, Shirag Sagar. So the way our company on the back end is designed is I spend 70% of my time in front of camera and doing interviews. That's by design. The other 30% of the time I run the company as CEO, and each one of our profit centers, I like to say that we are the smallest, like it's designed on the Berkshire Hathaway model, but we're small. There's only a little over 35 of us. So we're not like we're pushing over 35. An employee count. So when I say Berkshire Hathaway, I'm just saying that's where I got the idea. So what does Warren Buffett do? He hires individuals, or in his case, acquires companies, and then he lets the CEOs manage them and stays out of the way, or at least that's what it said he does. So in my version of that is to bring on executives over and to that have either run funded startups or have done something significant to that state in their life, so that now that profit center is run by somebody that doesn't need that same type of day-to-day oversight. So they run pretty autonomously for the most part, but it's all under the Mission Matters brand. They're the right fit. Many of them were our clients originally, or they knew us. Like, for example, Matt Cook, the director of our podcast agency, I've known him since my 20s, and we had our first finance job together, like real one, like adult job. So our bench is, but he's run funded startups himself. He was a professional golfer. So our bench is deep on the executive front. So now if you combine that part of the system now with the thesis, and then if you look at, and this is the part where I said, I don't know what's going to happen. This is what's interesting, and this is the unknown part. So the part about, can we make money, can we grow, are we in the right space, all of that's a known. Like, I believe it is, and I believe on the model and the numbers, it's sustainable and we'll continue to experience some growth. And if I'm right on that piece of it, then just as a business person, what's going to happen is, and this is already happening, the line item that at one point would be a marketing expense is now a profit center, because we're charged for advertising and people come to us. So what we used to pay for in advertising for reach now has flipped, so that we have that natural audience because we've done the work, and the flywheel of content continues to grow. So now this is the unknown part. When I went back in the original thing and said, okay, what do some of the best hosts in the world have in common? So when you think about like Larry King, you think about like an Oprah, you think about like a Howard Stern, you think about all these people, they've all done north of 30,000 interviews, like in their career, some over 40,000. And obviously Howard Stern is still going strong, right? So let's just say north of 30,000 though is the common number that I found, in the common metric. So now this is the unknown part. If, God willing, I, live a long life and everything else, and that's, his will, then within 10 years, maybe 20 years, I will have the largest public catalog, because their catalogs, remember, Johnny Carson's catalog's not public. You can't go anywhere. You can't Google it and listen to any interview he's ever done. So I will have the largest public catalog of any entertainer ever in the history of the entertainment business. So that is where the unknown. That's the who knows. I don't know. But for me, what am I doing? I'm sitting here having fun with you guys doing podcast interviews. So that's the full model, though, just so you understand the context of the design. And the reason I share that, and I share that with as many people as possible, is because I want other people. The reason I come on this show, and I just started guesting this year, is because I want other people to know that they should be playing this game too. You should go. Everybody should be out there starting podcasts and getting out there. And especially if you're business owners and entrepreneurs, they should be participating in this gold mine and this amazing opportunity. Because just circling back to one quick point, there's only a couple million podcasts. Who cares? It's brand new. People think it's saturated. It's brand new. This might as well just started yesterday.
Yeah, because people, when they listen to our podcast, they think there's one too many. That's the feedback that we've gotten. Anthony, he brings up some really interesting points, but I want to go to one other common trait that we see with founders quite a bit, which is driving towards a long-term vision. This long-term goal, we're keeping our eye in the future. You're using Adam's technique. We're really breaking down the numbers. We're trying to understand what the market's going to be, and we're really focused on that. In those short-term moments, you have to continue to move and tack. Sometimes we do that, Anthony, almost to the detriment of the business. Would you consider, like, if I asked you for advice, is it better for us to stay singularly focused on the long-term vision, or continue to move through the market in an agile way to try to take advantage of short-term opportunities?
Well, I really like the way Adam put this, and he has this working hypothesis, this thesis that he's working towards, and it doesn't sound like that. Like, he's done a good job of defining the long-term target, and frankly that's really hard to do. And then the tactics that you get there can modify quite a bit. So the strategies underneath that can change, but that end goal, the thesis needs to really stay clear. Otherwise, you're bouncing all over the place without a goal, without a noble cause. To steal something that we've used quite a bit. But there is this. We talk about this quite a bit, Chris. Where at what point do you need to start questioning that long-term goal? At what point is the world telling you to quit and you should listen? And I don't think we've ever come up with it. Like, I want to ask every guest this question, right? It's like, at what point does perseverance become stupidity? And I don't have an answer for that, because you talk to a lot of very successful founders, and in the face of like everybody telling them they're idiots for doing it, they went through anyway and then won.
And then wildly successful. It's almost ubiquitous for the founder story, right? And against everybody's advice, they just believed it in their gut. And then there's other folks that do that, and they never succeed, and they're miserable for their entire lives. I don't know what the answer. I don't know what the levers are to. So I guess we're talking about long-term and short-term goals, and I think you've done a good job defining what drives a long-term goal. But what I still don't have is, when do you pivot from that long-term goal? So I think I'll summarize the question to you, Adam, which is in this tension between short-term and long-term goals. What if all the things that are happening short-term are telling you, in your world, you found this market, you think it's awesome, you'll be long-term goal. What if it's telling you you're wrong?
Yeah, no, and I
Electrical.
love this question too, because think about this. So I go from managing hundreds of millions of dollars, which this is another story not related to your question. So we can go into it if you want to, but just to let you know, I go from that to then I'm in media full time. So think about it. All my friends are VCs, they're money managers, this, that, and they're like, wait a minute, Adam, you're going to be having a little podcast? Like, what are you doing, buddy? You okay? so so having a little crisis over there, like what's
Yeah, I
going
mean,
on, like
the answer is
so no
yes.
so if you
You're
want to
not
talk
you're not
about
well,
if you
right?
want to talk about the definition of what you're talking about, it's me. Zero media background, none, don't know anything. My first 300 plus episodes I did were recorded on my iPhone. I didn't even use a real mic. I didn't even know, like I didn't have an intro, I didn't have anything. You think that
Wait, we're
like
not supposed to record these on our iPhone?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe. I think somebody else start a show tomorrow that's recorded on an iPhone that's going to be bigger than mine. I'm not worried about that. But so looking at all those things, but I think there's two different things here. So the way that you described that, Anthony, I think you were saying what happens like to make money. Like, so when I think about money and brand is two different things for me and for my business. So
That
what
makes
you're
sense.
saying
Yeah, I'm
is
following.
what you're saying is like what happens when you don't have any more oxygen, any more money, any more cash flow? What happens if you're spending more than you're not? So that's a different operational problem, in my opinion, than the company, at least in my case. And I'll give you how how we pivoted and some things that changed in our world. So we started in book publishing. Podcasting wasn't the first thing. It was actually those books that we were holding up and making fun of and still selling. But for those that aren't aware, book selling is not the best business. Like people give books away.
Really?
And by the way, I didn't publish my first book because I wanted to be in the book publishing business. I did it because I was handing them out and I was attracting new clients for my wealth management company still. So for me, it was just a business card. I was giving them away by the thousand, literally, and I was bringing in tens of millions of dollars of assets under management. So it was a good proposition for me. It was only until, in my opinion, the market spoke and people started asking me to help them with that I had that as a little side project. So just as a quick side note, I'm going to get back to your question, but I wanted some context there. But for me, through the history of this company, what we've looked at is the thesis did stay the same. The North Star, the thesis, the what are we doing? For me, I was just thinking about one thing, and this is what I think about. What are we doing that's unique, and what are we doing that like nobody else is doing, or nobody else I won't say can, but maybe at our price point, because of the way we were operationally built in the beginning. I built this like a financial advisory practice on the back end. It's not built like a media company. That's why we can put out more content and have more distribution than companies that are 4, 5, 6 times our size. It's because of the way it was built in the back end. So I always look at what our competitive advantage was. And so understanding that led us into podcasting, that led us into this enormous quantity. Because again, I'll do 2,000 plus interviews this year. So that's an enormous, so I'm doing, depending on your math, I'm doing 40 years of content every year. So 40 years of content every year. So, okay, that's understood. So that's the thesis part. So let's just put that on one side. Now let's talk about the money side. Now the money side and figuring that out to what can we do to support the thesis, to grow the company, to feed ourselves, our families, right? So the money part led us to multiple pivots. So I'll give you one, for example. We started in book publishing, and then we moved to podcasting. So now we had podcasting and book publishing. What happened during COVID? During COVID, one of our products are, so you know how speakers, keynote speakers go to conferences, the conference organizer pays them, right? One of our products is that we call it a broadcasting and promotion package. And that's where conference owners hire me to come to their conferences and do a bunch of interviews. So I'll do 15, 20, 30 interviews over the course of a 2-day conference, right? So that's a big profit center for us. So what happens is COVID, all of that dried up. So so now is my thesis wrong about the quantity of interviews? No, the market just moved on me. Why? Because COVID. So there's no more conferences. So a big portion is gone. So my team is nimble enough to where we start listening to our market. And who's our market? It's the people that we're interviewing. It's the people that are in our network. And guess what people started asking? Hey, I got some extra time. This COVID thing, I'm stuck at home. I want to start a podcast. So people started asking us to help help them start podcasts. We weren't in that business. We had no plan on being in that business. But what was that going to solve? That was going to solve our reoccurring revenue problem at that point, which was because the conferences weren't happening anymore, but we still had the staff to pay, right? So now solving that, we just said, okay, we have some bench time. We have our editors, we have everything else. Adam's not traveling and doing all these additional interviews. So let's start taking on clients. So now to date, since COVID, we've launched over 250 shows. And if you look at our platform on missionmatters.com, you're going to see those shows. So, that solved the money problem. The thesis and the long-term goal and understanding that never changed. But along the way, the money problem and the cash flow and the reoccurring and all those things, we just looked at it as adding more profit centers, adding more products and reinventing. So the short term of it is we know AI right now is changing a lot of things. So we've been integrating AI now for a couple of years in different ways in our processes to stay ahead. And then we know that's going to continue to change. That's going to continue to change. And who knows what's going to happen in the next 30 years? There's going to be an Adam hologram that's going to be interviewing people, and there's going to be all kinds of other things going on. But the thesis of the interview it's being validated year by year. It's not like I'm in a closet somewhere or in my room thinking like, what's going on? It's being validated. I'll give you one form of validation that I can't even believe. It's kind of shocking to me, but we're working on something right now called the Africa Forward series, and I'm going to be going to Africa pretty soon and doing these interviews of these top presidents of banks and other institutions, and really bringing out some of the initiatives that they're doing worldwide. And fingers crossed on this one, but and this part isn't confirmed, but I'm going to just put it out in the universe. It's very likely that next year I will be interviewing between 3 and 5 African presidents of countries. That's insane. And cool. And so when you look at these things, these are validation for the long-term thesis. And the interesting part is I'm only 9 years in. I'm working on a 30-year timeline. So if I'm being validated year by year by increased distribution, by increased revenue, by increased profits, by increased reach, every different metric we're looking at is increasing. So that slow compounding part, I can't say it's compounding, but it's increasing. So it's being validated. We're not just saying that's it and I'm going to be hard-headed and we're not going to get better and no matter what, I'm right. No, that's not what we're doing over here. It's still a thesis.
Anthony, I think the thing that if Adam, they have a North Star, what we would call a noble cause, right? And they're
or a mission.
And their mission. So,
yeah.
And their pivots have been all under the alignment of that North Star. I think the biggest question really for founders and people that we've worked with is as they moved with Mission Matters, they moved all to try to grab revenue under that North Star. Mm-hmm. What happens when you start to move away from that North Star to capture revenue? Because we started the show by saying, why do founders build companies that they don't really like? A lot of that happens because they move away from their North Stars, I think. Is that right, Anthony?
Yeah. Well, I mean, something that I recognize when interviewing a bunch of founders is either you own the business or the business owns you. And I think the business starts owning you once you divert from the reason why you started the company. Now, that's not to say, like in the early stages of running a company or starting a business, the joke is you're kind of in the business for whatever somebody's going to write you a check for. But you should be okay with that, but only for a very short term as you're figuring out the as Adam put it, the oxygen that directly connects to your mission. But again, if you're driving only towards a mission and not making money, it's a hobby. I mean, that's what this podcast is for us, right, Chris? Like
100%.
Like for us, this podcast is a hobby. I mean, I've said this before. This podcast for me is like sex. It's like I like to do it. I enjoy it. If I'm lucky, it's 3 times a week, and my wife has no idea what I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah, that's
exactly
right.
So
yeah, that's well played, Anthony.
So for us, it's okay to have a hobby. That's what this we do it because we love founders. But but you have to make that, and you very clearly, Adam, made that distinction. If this isn't a hobby, this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. I have to, provide with the income from it, and hopefully serve other folks when I'm doing it. So I do think the things that you were talking about, and delineating between that mission and still earning revenue is extremely important for founders.
I want to get to the speed round, but Adam, I want to give you one more at bat here to say, how do we do this? So tactically, in your company, when you do quarterly meetings, do you put up your vision on the board and say, this is what we're building to? How do you remind your team about the long-term vision? And then how do you make sure that your short-term goals are aligned with that? This is where the rubber meets the road. It's fine to be talking about it philosophically, but how do you do it tactically?
So one of the benefits, I can't claim this works in every company, but I will say that it works in ours, is the benefit is that the end output of content. So, and this could translate to other companies, even if you're making something else. So maybe if a CEO is listening to this, and this may sound self-promotional, but I really don't mean it to be, you need to think about creating some type of content that, as your company scales, the entire company can buy into. A podcast is a really good way to do it. And the reason is because they get to hear directly from the CEO. Because what happens as your company grows and you don't get to talk to everybody, and now you're not hiring, and you don't have that conversation with every single person, because your company's getting bigger and bigger. So obviously I'm talking to a certain size company there, but even for larger companies, like having a podcast so that you can communicate and you can talk about different things, and people can start to feel it's that one to many. They can feel like they know you and they buy into you. The old version of this would be like, I worked for Charles Schwab for a while. And when I was there, you'd hear maybe like the very corporate, like either either quarterly update, maybe once a quarter you got a message or something like that, or there was an email or a letter or a letter to shareholders, in the case of like a Berkshire Hathaway, what we were talking about before. But nowadays, if you think about it, your employees are being entertained by many other mediums. So something like a weekly podcast or something so that your company, your employees can listen in and be like, oh wow, like this is what our founder's talking about. It's not a company update. It's who are they as a person? Can they buy into the CEO as a person? Maybe they're interviewing founders just like you Chris and Anthony are. So now what happens is your employees hear you talking to me, they hear your conversations, they feel more bought in. Who knows? Maybe their spouse listens to the show too. Maybe their kids listen to the show. So now you have entire family units that can be bought into your company and your brand as a whole. Then it changes. It's no longer this I go to work thing. It's they're listening to content outside of work and they're entertained and they feel like they know you. So that translates in when it comes to podcasting, just like it translates into entertainment. So now you have a multifaceted relationship with many individuals that work for you that choose to listen to your content. So that's speaking like specifically to other founders who aren't in the media business and why it's important to consider that. Now translating back to my business, we're doing that at an extreme angle. So what happens is our wins, like when I go to Africa and interview these presidents, like that's a win for the entire company. So if you're everyone from an editor to an executive to anything else you're doing, and if we originally hired you because you bought into what we're trying to do at Mission Matters, which is amplify the stories for other individuals and help business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives do that. If you bought into that, then the amount of content you have, like think about it, you're at work, you're editing episodes, you're listening to them, it becomes an immersive experience. And that's just the day-to-day work, and you love what you're doing. And when you go home or when you go other places, you're talking about it. Like, and I know this because I have these conversations when I go to, like, for example, Matt Cook, he came into town, the director of my agency the other day, him and my girlfriend, we went out to dinner. He came in from Arizona where he lives and his wife's talking about it. And I could just feel that his wife was involved with the business and supporting, because she's also on some level digesting that content. So you can see the buy-in, but it's not that I'm spending extra money or having to create some special program or something else. It's just by the definition of the work that we're doing. And everybody has that version of it. So I would challenge people to think about what their version of that is. And so now going back to the numbers and how I keep people motivated is there's a target. How many episodes have been done this month? Like, that's it. There's a number. And it's easy. It's easy. We know our goal is over 2,000 this year. We can see every single year the quantity of episodes that were done. So everybody understands that one number. So it's just one number, one literal number. And then that's the overall, let's just call it, I think we used the word North Star multiple times. So let's just say that's the North Star. But then what we look at after that is each profit center and the design of the business. If you're responsible for your profit center, then you know if your profits are up or down. You know if your revenue's up or down. You know where you're essentially, again, it's all under Mission Matters, but you know what you're doing as an executive. So you're really managing yourself to that, and you're coming and saying, well, this is why if your revenue's down, this is why this is happening. This is how we can change it. Or you already figured out the problem really by the time it comes to me. So I don't usually get them until, like, I don't usually need to prescribe the answer at that point. When I'm being updated on something, they kind of already have the answer. Really smart people, hiring smart people helps.
Anthony, we got to get to the speed round, but I want to give you a chance to react. To me, what struck me was Adam was saying was it's almost effortless, because his metrics, his short-term goals, he's constantly talking about his long-term goals. Is that what you heard as well?
Yeah. And I think a lot of founders struggle with something that you just said, Adam, and that is you have one score on your scorecard that you're tracking. And is that the right metric? I don't think it even matters. Like, the fact that you're just measuring something.
One quick thing, it does. Well, in the years when there was a 2-year time period where we let those decrease, and we saw, and I didn't come up with that number because that matched my original thesis. We had 2 years in between where I let them decrease, and we switched the model a little, and our revenue shrunk with it. When I changed it, it went up. It immediately went back up. So that's how I came up on it. I'm not saying that I had this vision.
And I'm saying it doesn't even. I was saying so. First of all,
yeah,
it's brilliant. Secondly, I don't even think it necessarily, like, you could measure views instead of interviews. You could measure but the fact that you're actually measuring something that isn't maybe directly correlated with the vision doesn't mean that you're off vision. It means that you're measuring something. And if things aren't going your way, maybe it's just because you're measuring the wrong thing. And doesn't mean your vision is wrong. It's like just change the metric that you're measuring. Like, Alcoa has a very famous story where the aluminum manufacturer, where they decided to measure and focus very hard on safety. That's all. The entire company switched to focusing on safety. And that doesn't seem like it correlated to anything, but it correlated to a lot. It improved output in the company. It improved revenue and improved employee retention. It improved a lot of things in the company by just focusing on this one metric. Wow. So just picking, again, it doesn't have to directly align with your vision, but measuring something really does, in the short term, really does dramatically impact your long-term goals.
We measure the amount of dad jokes told, which is funny. We haven't had a dad joke. All right, Adam, are you ready for the speed round? Adam, quarterly targets or annual vision, which is more important?
Annual vision.
Customer feedback or market research?
Customer feedback.
Team growth or revenue growth?
Revenue growth.
Process optimization or innovation?
Innovation.
Risk mitigation or opportunity capture?
Opportunity capture.
Very good stuff, Anthony. We
Yeah, it's
covered
great
a
stuff.
lot of ground. What did you learn today?
So the fundamentals that I wrote down. So reverse engineer from mission. Every goal must serve your 10-year target, which I really, and in Adam's case, 30-year target. Pivot when your short-term tactics towards the vision are not providing oxygen. And then I wrote down, just measure something regularly. It's that simple. Measure something regularly.
I think it's a good stuff. All right, deep dive resources. The One Thing by Gary Keller. Master the art of focusing on what matters most. Good Strategy, Bad Strategy by Richard Rumelt. And Measure What Matters by John Doerr. And of course, one of your 35 books, Adam. Where can we find out? Where can we get one of your books? Where can we find out more information about you? Where can we engage with Mission Matters?
Real simple, easiest way, go to Instagram, Ask Adam Torres. I have a link tree. You can go find whatever you like. And if you have a podcast show idea, a book idea, anything like that, send me a DM. Love to talk to you. Love to hear what you're working on. So again, Ask Adam Torres on Instagram, and that leads to everything.
Anthony and I's new show is called Dad Jokes Today. It's the best dad joke that we've heard that day. It's just that. It's just us.
The icon for the show is eyes rolling.
Yeah. You're already building the logo in your mind, aren't you?
Exactly right.
Have you just popped open Illustrator to start building that logo? That's pretty good stuff. Adam, thanks again for joining us. Anthony, what do we have coming up?
First of all, thank you everybody for listening. To find out what we got coming up next, just go to howtofounder.com, where you can connect with us on LinkedIn or subscribe to our YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify channels. And I just want to, we say this every episode, but I truly believe it. Thank you for listening. And you're the pioneer of economic prosperity. And we're grateful for being there along with you along the way. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Adam. Really take care. All right. Bye.